Hey everyone, it's Mr. Southern coming at you with a lesson on Unit 3, Lesson 4. Today we're going to learn about while loops. Or sorry, not while loops. We learned about while loops. Now we're going to learn about for loops. I'm just going to cut straight to the chase just so we can do a little bit of practice. And I'll kind of explain with an activity in class how this all works. Um, just for fun, let me go to part C. So I'm going to go to Lesson 4, Module 6. Um, for loops. So in this case, I'm kind of tired with Painter, but yet again, code.org brings it right back to us, which is awesome. Okay, so here's the deal. We're going to have a 1D array that's given to us called colors. It is the string data type. And the square brackets, remember, tells me that we made a one-dimensional array ready to receive text values of red, blue, orange, purple, green. We spawn this painter, a street painter called painter. Okay, so it's a street painter object. So I'm going to point to that street painter.java file in a minute. It's going to spawn at X value of 8, Y value of 2, facing south, 50 units of paint. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to call this paint lines method. And it's going to take in our one-dimensional array of colors. So red, blue, orange, purple, green. And it's going to go ahead and use, I don't know what the for means, but I'm going to check it out in a minute. Let's go and run and see if this thing does anything. And then we'll look at the to do. Okay, so there it is. Let me try and speed it up because my internet's lagging a bit. And there we go. What do they want us to do here? Oh, they just want me to convert the while loop to a for loop. Okay, no problem. So our little painter does the job. So what's funny is I wonder if I would just pass the test without doing anything. It's probably going to read the code and see that I have a while loop, so it's not happy. Yep. Well, actually, it tells me it succeeded. So well, I guess you can pass the test very easily, but you didn't do the work to begin with. So let's go ahead and do the work. So basically what they want me to do is they want me to convert this while loop to a for loop. So here's the deal. For loops are just basically a much more efficient way of coding a while loop. There are certain cases where you might want to use a while loop for sure. But in my case, I mean, for loop is pretty much the king here, right? How are we going to do this? What's nice is a for loop. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and in this case, we're just painting, right? So a for loop allows me to traverse through an array and allows me to access each element and do something with it. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and design a for loop. And the first thing I'm going to do is you'll notice in the while loop on line 42 there, it said we did int index equals 0. So I'm going to do the same thing here. What this is doing is basically creating a counter with a value of 0. So in Java, we start counting from 0. Why is that? It's just the way the program is. But if you create a list or an array in this case, the very first element has a value for an index of 0. So the way I tell my students is it's like we're in a parking spot, and you know how like at the airport, if I park in a big parking garage, we know what floor, what area, and what our spot number is. We all have spot numbers. So imagine if I had a bunch of parking spots in my array and I numbered them from 0 to whatever, however many elements you want. That's what's happening here. So the for loop allows me to push out a number, say set it equal to 0, and then say, hey, every time I'm going to access one element at a time, we're going to start with index number 0. And the second part of the for loop is going to ask, well, how long do you want this thing to run? And so we're always going to let index be less than the value of the length of whatever the array is, which I'm trying to find. Which, am I blind here? We did public class street painter. Da 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 da. It looks like we have this 1D array called paint colors. Here we go. So I'm going to take in that 1D array and go use that dot length. So that's already pre-baked into Java. If you use array name dot length, it'll tell you how many elements are in there. And we always want index value because we start counting from 0 to be less than, or to basically end before we get to that final number for the length of the array. So again, if I have an array with 5 elements, that means we have index values from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's 5 elements, but because we start counting from 0, index value will go all the way up to 4, and then on the 5th one, it'll kill the for loop. Okay, last thing we're going to do is we're going to do this index plus plus. What that does is it adds 1 to my counter every time I run the loop. So at the end of the loop, it'll do that. Okay, next part of the component. Now I need to do something with the actual code. And to keep it really easy for you, I would probably just use all of this that they have in there. right? They're basically telling me what the code was. So I take in the paint method, and we're going to take in that paint colors array and do a bracket index. So when I'm on the 0th index, it's going to do paint bracket paint colors 0, which the first color we're going to paint with is red, right? And then the second iteration, when we loop again, it's going to do paint with blue. Then the third iteration, next value is 2. It's going to be orange, right? And so on and so forth until we get to the very end. And then once we paint with green, when we loop back again, it'll say, hey, index value is now 5, but it won't find an index value of 5 anywhere in the array. Let me run it to make sure that there's no issues, because if this runs clean, then we know it works. And there it goes, it works. Cool. So that's how you change a while loop to a for loop. For loop I can do basically in one line, what a while loop with the int index equals 0 and all that blah 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 might take 3 or 4 lines. Okay, so that wasn't too bad. Let's go to module 7. I already did A in class. Maybe I'll do B, school buses in now. Just keep in mind when you do code.org, a lot of students I have are hitting the test button and they're failing. And part of the reason is they want your output to look exactly the way they do. So when you hit the test button, it runs the shadow code from code.org. It is not from Java. I mean, it's coded in Java, but code.org wrote it, and it's reading every little letter that you have produced. Okay, so I need to follow that format. So you need to keep that in mind. First thing, we're going to do pretty much the exact same thing. In this case, though, just like in the last lesson where we used while loops, we're going to use for loops to deal with one or two different one-dimensional arrays and put them together. In this case, we're going to code a toString, right? Remember, that allows us to print the object. So in this case, they have string result equals that blank, and then it's going to produce that later. So here's our for loop to traverse through the two 1D arrays and stuff them into result variable. How are we going to do that? Bust out a for loop. Remember, the first component is we set that index value equal to 0. And then the next value is we want to keep running this thing until I get to the end of whatever the array name is. Looks like bus numbers. Yep. So I'm just going to copy and paste that in. So it'd be bus numbers dot length. And then we're going to keep running this until you get, or sorry, and then at the end of every loop, I'm going to go ahead and run that plus plus, which adds 1 to the index value at the end. For the code, we're going to do result plus equals, just like in the last lesson, right? Where we're basically trying to concatenate all the results of bus number and route number. Now I have to be careful because I need to follow their format. So one thing I'm going to caution you is if you look at the arrays that are made, note that they just have numbers and the identifying route numbers, right? There's no word bus number, route number listed there. So I have to add that in manually here. How we do that? It's just text. So it's going to be a quotation, bus, the capital B. If it's a lowercase b, you will fail the test with a number. Okay. And we're going to concatenate with where are we at? The bus numbers, right? That was the name of one of the arrays with the index. And I'm going to do another concatenation because at the end there appears to be another space and a hyphen. And then looks like I also need to add route there with a space, a pound sign. There we go, concatenation. And then the other one was called route numbers, the other array with the bracket index. So this will allow me to traverse through it, both the arrays at the same time. Last but not least, the one I missed the first time I did this, we have to do this little /n thingy. That's going to print it on a new line. And that should be it. I'm going to run it to see if I have any errors. And lo and behold, there's nothing. So now I just got to print this thing. So I have a toString already made. So in theory, I could just spawn an object, what is it, the school bus class? So school bus, we're in the Puyallup School District. So new school bus, bracket. We're going to take in the buses and the routes. Right. In case you're wondering, how do you know what's inside the parentheses? Well, remember, school bus class is where I'm trying to spawn an object from, instantiate an object from. So when I go to schoolbus.java, right, and I want to use this thing, I'm always going to look at the constructor. So if I use the school bus constructor, it's ready to take in this array and that array too. So bus numbers and bus route or route numbers. So that's what I'm going to do. I have the buses 1D array made with the routes. So I'm going to go ahead and add those in. So when I run it, it's going to run free of any errors. And then now I need to print the object. So it's going to be system.out.println. And we're going to print that Puyallup object. Clear this just so I don't have to scroll down as much. And then our code will tell me, and there they all are. Right, nice and neat, matches what they want to have done. If you hit test, it will pass the test. And that's it. So the main thing to remember, just kind of as a recap, is when you code that for loop, you're going to follow this template every time. So the for loop, parentheses, right? So it's for parentheses. The first value is going to be where do you want that counter to start at? Second value is going to be, well, how long do you want this thing to go? And a third value is, hey, what do you want me to do when I'm done running the one iteration of the loop? Oh, okay, you want me to add one index. No problem. And then what goes inside the curly braces is the actual code you want it to do. And the bracket index allows me to go ahead and every time I loop through, access each element. And then obviously in this case, show them. So that's that. Hope that helps. Let me know if you guys have questions.